Okay, Mr. Burleson, we have the property hearing. Daniel, you want to,
Mr. Burleson, if you'd like, you can come sit
Come.
up here where everybody can hear you.
all right.
Mr. Burleson's
Here's
is
the pictures from today.
excellent. Thank you, sir. Awesome. Pass those around, please.
Is that your fence that you put up?
Yeah.
Okay.
As we discussed before, the nature of these hearings is to determine whether the property is in a dilapidated condition so that it is a hazard to public safety and the surrounding neighborhood. And so that's a factual determination to be made by the Board of Aldermen. And Mr. Burleson has the opportunity today to present proof that he's cleaning it up or has cleaned it up or what have you. And y'all have the ability to either declare it dilapidated and move forward with allowing him to have 30 days to finalize whatever repairs or corrections y'all feel are necessary, or having the city do those and then charging that back to his city ad valorem taxes. However, as they found in the county, allowing the people 30 days to remedy the situation themselves has worked great. And as I'm sure y'all remember, Mr. Burleson has been making efforts to remedy the situation beforehand. So that's why we're here this evening.
Any questions for Mr. Burleson? Or I did drive by the property today, and I said he has built a wooden fence that really, protects the neighbors from the view while he's working on the house. And he's got a big project on his hand there.
Progress in the worst part of the year for doing this, he's making steady progress. The grass
Yeah.
is mown.
Yeah, keeping the grass mowed, that's right.
If y'all are satisfied, instead of doing this for another month, y'all could, this is just an option, it's not my suggestion, but y'all could continue it for 6 months, and this hearing can be continued or for 3 months or 2 months, or whatever y'all feel comfortable at. Or y'all can just say, he's done enough, and y'all are satisfied and close the matter.
I would suggest maybe 6 months or 3 months, because we will now have a building inspector that can be keeping tabs on it. And make sure that there's steady progress going on. Whatever the board feels on that.
I'm good with
6 months is fine.
6
Thank you.
months?
6
Okay,
months is
we'll
fair.
have a motion then for
Make
6
a motion.
months. All right, second on that? Perfect. All in favor? Okay, Mr. Burleson,
What's giving me the 6 months?
just steady progress.
What more do you need done to it within that 6 months?
We just want to say that the building is being in a state of steady repair. Like I said, you have a huge project on your hand there. Not something I would have wanted to undertake, I can assure you. But you are maintaining the premises. That's an improvement. The fence is an improvement because your neighbors don't have to visually see it every day, from the back and side. But I think it just needs to be some steady work going on as far as remodeling or rebuilding the house. Is that what y'all are, I'm hearing, really?
All right, so come back here in 6 months.
I'll send you another.
Yeah, he'll.
All right, yes, that'll work.
Okay,
I appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank you.
thank you for coming.
Would anybody else like to look at these pictures?
I would. They're great.
Okay, next on our agenda is the Crowe-Martin agreements, and the first one we have is the employment of J. Shannon Crowe as prosecuting attorney.
These are the same agreements that we entered into last year and I think the 3 years before that, so there's been no changes.
Used to be the, yeah.
So no rate increases.
No, sir.
No,
I'll move that we enter into this agreement with Shannon Crowe, or with.
Okay.
Second.
We're gonna do
Second from
two different
Nicole.
things, right?
Yeah, we're doing.
Right.
We're
Yeah,
doing
it's
Shannon
two
first.
different-
Shannon first.
Okay.
We employ Shannon as prosecuting attorney. Okay, we had you get that motion in second?
Yes.
All in favor of that? And that's unanimous. Okay. And the next part of that is the contract with the law firm of Crowe Martin PLLC to represent the board here. So, again, I think that was the same as last year.
Is it specified, or is it just understood that Daniel will be a representative from Crowe?
It's not specified, it's the firm. It's the firm, so it could be any of the three, actually.
I don't have any plans to abdicate my monthly presence here.
Thank you, Daniel.
You are.
Okay. No comment. Do we have a motion to accept
Make a
that?
motion.
Nicole makes that motion. Have a second? Herbie seconds. All in favor? Okay, so then we'll retain you, I suppose. Okay,
He
next
said-
one is the ethical opinion, and you're going to, okay. We'll let Daniel have this.
So, if you could mark the minutes that Mr. Caden Coughlin has vacated. Thank you. Just drew a blank, I apologize.
You want me into?
Excuse me one second.
Daniel actually asked for an opinion from the attorney.
Okay.
So kind of dig at.
Yeah. Well, informally, I emailed the ethics office with the state of Mississippi, and they sent me back one of their letters that they had written in the past to another alderman in another city in very, very similar situation. And their advice in that certain instances was that as long as the alderman fully recuses himself, which may have a possible interest in the project, that everything is fine ethically. But he must fully recuse himself, and that means marking for the minutes that he leaves the meeting, not being present during its discussion with the rest of the board, and further somebody else with the organization present the idea. So with that advice in hand, I would like to rehash like we had never heard of this idea before, and because essentially we haven't done anything except say that the city is interested in the idea. So I'd like to formally introduce Mr. Glenn Evans, who is a member of the Base Camp Coding Academy, and they have an idea to pitch to the city. And with that idea, Mr. Evans, if you'd like
Sure.
to introduce yourself.
Sure. Back, sir. I'm Glenn Evans, and I'm the co-founder of Base Camp. We all know what Base Camp is and the success we've enjoyed here in Water Valley with a lot of support locally and regionally for 2 years. We're in the third year of our three-year pilot and ready to expand the program. We've got demand for the program. We've got opportunities for adjacent programs, working with Northwest and other partners. So we need a bigger space, and we would be interested in the Big Yank building if it's available.
So with that in mind, I have sat down with other members of the Base Camp Coding Academy, and they have fleshed out their idea of what they want there in installation, and it will be for educational purposes to have the Coding Academy there, as well as extension offices for the Northwest Community College to allow for more post-high school education, as it were, or education that would go alongside with children, kids going to high school. So, as we spoke earlier, there is a facet in the statute which allows the city to donate property of that nature to a 501c3 nonprofit for the purpose of having a program which benefits the community as a whole. Educational programs are clearly within that. They've been stated that by the Attorney General's office numerous times. So with that in mind, we have the ability to discuss selling the building, and if we sell it, we'll have to go through the statutory procedures that are outlined, or we have the opportunity to discuss donating the building. Before we get into the meat and potatoes of that conversation, or actually start talking about terms, the fact that I've gotten an opinion from the Ethics Commission from the state of Mississippi does not actually protect us from what we're doing. To have protection through the state for anything we're doing, we have to submit to them a formal request from an opinion. And so part of the purpose of tonight is to say that I understand that y'all are extremely interested in this program. This program is going to be a multi-million-dollar program because of the renovations that must be done to the building to make it weather tight. In addition to its future operation will be extremely costly. So in order to protect everybody involved and to prevent anybody from coming back and trying to unwrap our ball of wire here, I would suggest, or I would like y'all's permission to write the ethics opinion and the Attorney General's office for a formal opinion as to the city's ability to donate this building to the Base Camp Coding Academy for its stated purpose, and to flesh out. I fully feel that Mr. Kagan Coughlin's involvement has no ethical conflict with this program from the opinions I've read in the past. However, to give him a blanket of protection moving forward from anything that arises, I would also ask the ethics opinion to give him that. And so that's, it just gives everybody a layer of protection that I think, why not?
Yeah.
Especially on a project this large.
Now, I would think we would need a motion to give Daniel authority to apply for this. Senator makes a motion, Nicole seconds, all in favor of that. Okay. And within that, of course, when we get on down to it, would be the requirements that it be used that way forever, so to speak, or if it did not, then that property would revert back to the city. But that would be something other than the ethical opinion, of course.
Well,
But
and part of the financing for this type of operation is through USDA. Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's right.
And so there will be loans taken out on the project, which will have to subordinate, and so if we have a right of revision on this piece of property that it might come back to us, we have to understand that there's also going to be a deed of trust on it to the USDA to allow them to finance the reconstruction or the remodeling, renovations of the infrastructure facility. So that'll be my Attorney General's, my request for an opinion is going to be a tad complicated.
yeah,
But it's-
they have to address that issue
Right,
also. Yes.
and so it's going to be twofold. It's going to be asking both. I plan to draft a letter which can be sent to both departments, and I won't have to draft two letters. It'll just be to both of them. But that will address Mr. Coughlin's involvement and or his lack thereof, and secondly, the intended purpose, because at this stage of the development, from what it has been explained to me, the month-to-month operational costs are estimated around $20,000. And to cover that type of monthly operational cost, they are they are envisioning using a portion of the facility to rent out to new businesses or to established businesses and using their rent to offset the overhead and costs, which to me sounds like a winning idea. But we'll also take care of that. Right. And the financing as well, to make sure that there's no issues with the revision clauses in the financing.
Okay.
So those are the three big
issues.
that I'm gonna hit and clarify.
Okay. Any other questions for Glenn or for Daniel on this? Okay. Thank you, Glenn. See if you can bring Kagan back in now. Decided to keep
You know what most.
Okay, the next item on the agenda would be the National Guard Armory. And of course, we've been discussing that for some time now, but I think we got a pretty good clarification last month that they are no longer meeting there at all, that the employee that we were concerned about no longer really works in that building. He comes over and cuts the grass. Yeah, and
He has his
they did-
orders now. He has his orders
He
now.
has his orders
Yeah.
now.
So he's
It's actually on
secure.
paper, so
Right.
he's
So-
secure in his job.
Technically, they're no longer using it. They do come over and cut the grass. They cut it this week. Yeah, I went by there and it was, grass was cut now. But the next thing is, do we want to request from the Adjutant General and all for the Armory to, quote, be closed, to be put on the closure list and us to take it back over? And, I mean, it is our property now. I need that proper understanding. It's always been our property, but they've used it for years and years.
So it'll be a request to terminate their 100-year lease.
100-year lease, really. So, and that's not, I'm not asking for what we're going to use it for right now. I mean, I know y'all probably all been approached by different people saying, hey, I want this for
Oh,
that.
yes.
But, that's to be determined if we do it.
Right.
We will have to start maintaining the property ourselves for it.
I think there's definitely a higher, better use for that property than sitting vacant.
Oh, yes,
Definitely.
definitely.
But they've requested,
Yes.
Okay, Herbie's
they've
making the motion.
requested funds, they've requested funds to come in and clear the building. But those funds have not been released or granted yet. But they're anticipating that.
I think it's very
Come and
little
clean
property
it all
that they
up.
have left in there, maybe.
Yeah,
I
they
don't
just
know
wanna
if
clean
he's
it
got his
up and,
computer left
you
in
know,
there or not.
get a couple of dumpsters and make sure everything's cleaned out.
This isn't within my purview, but is there gonna be any added debt to this yearly budget if we take it over at this point?
Well, actually, we will be saving $150 a month if they, once they accept it, because we pay them.
And we'll have to pay, mow the grass.
Yeah, and we'll have to mow the grass. Does the county give any funds, Lee? Okay, I could not remember. So, I mean, actually.
It's already insured through our county,
Yeah,
it's
our
already on the
property.
list, it's already
Yeah,
insured, so
it-
that's not gonna change at all.
We've always owned it, it's just been a leased building. So we have a motion to make that request. Do we have a second? Nicole, second. Any other discussion on it? I know it's bittersweet, maybe, because I know a lot of people that served, especially during the Vietnam era, told me that they hated to see it, but they understood, because they couldn't believe it. Just no one from here really is in the Guard anymore. So we do have the motion in second, so all in favor of that request, and that is unanimous. Okay, next on the agenda is the Planning Commission recommendations. And, you know, all y'all got these in advance. It was some think they must have a pretty good long meeting. But Eddie did a good job of sending out all the notes, the minutes, and what they decided, and it was, I don't think we need to break it down property by property. We can either, but that's up to y'all, we can, or we can choose to accept their recommendations.
I have one clarification question.
Okay.
On the commercial, is this, so the satellite picture and then the plot lines are a little off, but this doesn't have any frontage on Main Street. It would all go out to 32. I have
Mayor,
that.
I can speak to that question if you like.
Okay, yeah, please, wait, that's, we're talking about the property down on,
Right,
Sound
behind the health department.
Yeah.
The frontage on the piece of property that's being purchased is fronting on Highway 32. Will not be any frontage on South Main.
That was-
Will there be access roads? Is that what you mean by frontage? No access roads
frontage.
without?
No, the buyer, the purchaser will not have any road access to Highway 2 on South Main. Only be off 32.
That was my only concern, was seeing that where 32 comes in.
Yeah,
We'd
we have to
probably
do
have
it
a
in
light.
light or something. Thank goodness we don't have to do that.
okay, so we want to take their recommendations as one whole, or break each one down.
Could-
Okay. So we have a,
Probably should do them separate.
let's entertain a motion to accept this, then we'll get a second, then we'll have discussion on it. So we need a motion to accept their recommendation.
I make a motion.
Kagan makes a motion, need a second. Fred seconds. Okay, any discussions on these?
I thought they each made sense. The residential variance, which was less than 5% of the total lot size. The commercial is sitting in everything there is commercial. And commercial pays a higher property tax, which I like to see.
Well, one thing that I really liked was that they just didn't rubber stamp it. They looked at each thing hard and said no to some, you know, so that was, I think they really went by the ordinances. And I appreciate the work they're doing, but
Yeah, that's fine.
that was,
And the
Hard to learn all that
documentation,
stuff.
Yeah.
documentation after the fact was great.
okay. Any other discussion? Okay, so all in favor of accepting the recommendation? Yes, unanimous. Along that line, I'll just throw this in here, Trey McGee has accepted the building inspector's job. So he has picked up a packet on ordinances and, you know, what his job description will be. And really looking forward to it. Even asked maybe if there were some seminars later he might could attend and stuff. So
Yeah, some great.
and so he's really looking forward to doing that job and doing it right.
Can we request that he come to our next meeting?
Sure.
So we can talk about just the process
Yeah.
of enforcement and when people have
Yeah,
questions.
that was one of the things I discussed with him was that thing that says enforcement, and he was okay with it.
And the money that we've set aside to purchase.
I told him that, and he had just purchased 2018 International Building Codes for electrical work, which is his biggest item, of course.
So I would say we would put that on the agenda for next month to go ahead and look at adoption of all those items.
Yeah.
But I'll be glad to send it back out to everybody.
Okay, item number 11 is the light wine and beer ordinance, which was voted on last month, to allow refrigerated beer to be sold. So we do need to officially adopt the ordinance change so we can be running the paper one time, and then it would go into effect how many days afterwards? 30 days afterwards.
It's supposed to be August 3rd, I think is the date.
Okay. So I need a motion to accept that ordinance. Fred makes a motion, have a second. Kagan seconds. All in favor? And that is unanimous. Okay, item number 12 is the solid waste endorsement of the, for increasing the fees that we discussed last month, and we have the list of how each one would go over the next 3-year period. And that's something that's gonna be needed if Mike keeps tearing up these garbage trucks.
Got one out yesterday.
They're aging, so, you know, but,
When we publish in the paper, not to, do we have to put all of this? That's a lot of words to pay the paper for.
well, we do have to because it is
Yeah, it's all
changing the
part of the
ordinance.
case.
State sets a rate on that at 12 cents worth.
But I mean the actual chart that spells out the 3 years.
So you have to provide, if you don't provide the full ordinance, you have to provide enough information to give the general idea of what the ordinance is. And unfortunately, it would be my opinion that you can't do that unless you provide the full thing on that one. I think maybe you could shorten the beer ordinance to something shorter to run in the paper if y'all wanted me to draft something.
That would be more than the paper one.
There you go.
Okay.
So you gotta offset those two costs.
As he smiles. Michael Jelly, say,
On the change of the price wise, what are we, are the dumpster fees and stuff, are we
Everything.
going in percentage wise, or are we going up on yardage wise, what we had before for Victor?
well,
I haven't-
it's a percent on each one yardage.
So everything went up across the board.
Yeah.
It was up by percent of the cost, not anything else. So if it was $100, it's gonna be 150, up 50%.
Again, it's been some time since it's been amended, so. To have a motion to accept this ordinance change. Cinnamon, second. Nicole, all in favor? That's unanimous. Okay, Ms. Lane?
Thanks for the opportunity to speak tonight. I kind of wanted to talk about the garbage cans on Main Street. And I kind of ran an experiment because I walk up and down Main Street every morning, and I've kind of kept an eye on when they're actually getting emptied, which is not routinely. But as an experiment, I threw a piece of plastic trash into one of the receptacles because I knew it wouldn't, you know, if it got wet, it wouldn't just dissolve, that kind of thing. Well, because I was trying to be a good citizen and pick up a piece of trash anyway. So I threw it in there on June the 12th. I kind of kept an eye on that particular receptacle. I passed by it on June the 27th. That piece of plastic was still in the receptacle. And then I got lazy and didn't walk the next day. And then the day after, I went and took a walk, and that particular receptacle had been emptied. But that was well over 2 weeks in between when I put that piece of trash in there and when I didn't see it anymore. Then the other question I have is about how they smell. I mean, you know, we have an ordinance that says if you are a residential, you know, garbage customer, you've got to put stuff in bags. Well, we don't have any bags in those receptacles, and especially the ones that sit in front of restaurants and stuff. You know, people throw foodstuffs in there. And on warm days, it gets to be sort of smelly. So my next question is, how often are they getting, well, okay, first question, how often are they getting emptied? And do they ever get cleaned out? Because just emptying them is not resolving the odor issue.
Okay. Michael, I'm going to refer that to you. How often do y'all?
We run the route every Friday, they run the truck through. I have addressed it myself going through because, some of the cans, they will go by and look at it, if it's not real full, then they don't empty. Okay, so I have addressed that problem with that there. We don't clean the cans out because we pick it up and dump the cans into the truck. Not sitting in there raking it all out and everything because I don't have the time to sit there on all of them. But they are supposed to be doing routine check every week on every can. I've gone by myself and looked and inspected, because they said they have, and then I take a picture of it, and then I'll address the problem with it. But we do, every Friday, they're supposed to go through. Now, if they see it before the week, if it's full, before the week, if a particular one, then, you know, hey, go get it. Or if I see it, that it needs to be, but we don't have any liner in none of the cans. These bags we have won't fit, won't stretch out the size of that, what the cans are.
Well, I mean, since it is supposedly a requirement for ordinance, right? Anyway, I think it would help with the odor issue for sure, if they were lined.
Then we can probably address that with some type of bags. And I will try to defend them some, because we've had new drivers and we've had temporary people on the route now for 6 weeks.
Well, it was the same last year.
Yeah.
Not
I
that it
started
hadn't
walking
been
that
Yeah,
route
addressed,
last
it's
year.
been watched.
Michael has addressed it with them, and we will try to keep an eye on it, and we will try to get some bags. that
We've
fit.
never put liners in none of the cans, they've always just been cans. You know, I don't have the power to pick, the manpower to pick them up, take them in, pressure wash them, put them back out on the street.
We will try to
Again,
keep-
that's,
Yeah.
it's
But
the
it has
city's
been-
decision to.
It has been addressed and it's still working on it.
Okay.
One other thing too, Michael, is several of those cans, there's trash underneath there. So when the cans are getting picked up, they're not picking the stuff up that's underneath those cans. One in particular, it's Snip, Flip, and Curl, there's a bunch of trash underneath that particular stuff.
I'll see what you
So,
We're gonna have to be some good citizens ourselves, because, our ordinance says it has to be bagged, but there's no bags in there, so that's, okay, it's catch-22, yeah.
okay, my second issue is speeding on Market Street. I mean, I realize that, it feeds into the bypass, so obviously it's really well traveled. But, I mean, it's 25 miles an hour, that is the posted speed limit, until you get west of the school there. And, I mean, I live on that street, I watch the traffic, people do not go 25 miles an hour. They go well over 25 miles an hour. So, if there would be a way maybe to run a speed check up and down that street, particularly before school gets started, so it wouldn't disrupt the school traffic, because people really go fast on that street.
They do run them doing school.
They do.
As doing school especially.
People have
because
passed
of-
me on that street
Yeah.
driving at least 60 miles an hour. because
Absolutely.
But
I
I
was
will
going the
defer
speed
that
limit and I
to
wasn't going
Chief
fast
back
enough.
there, and he,
Somebody will be out tomorrow.
Well, it would be good, again, if we could sort of kind of get the public aware of the fact that, before school starts, oh, we're keeping an eye on this, you might want to slow down, that would be great.
We'll, there will be somebody patrolling that street heavily tomorrow.
Charlotte,
if my wife gets a ticket, I'm gonna blame you.
That's okay,
Hey, she
Lee.
gets tickets already. It's
That's
not gonna be our fault.
okay. You can blame me, but then you're still gonna come bail me out when I need it, right? Those were my two
All right,
issues.
thank you for coming.
Thanks for letting me speak.
Thank you, Charlotte.
okay. Lee? You got an answer to him? Lee?
Me?
Okay, yeah, you're next.
Thank y'all once again. I'm here primarily about the dilapidated property issue that I've been before you several times. Particularly of interest is our house up on Bell Street. Daniel and I know is familiar with that particular property, so is Kagan. Has there been any progress on that particular house?
He knows he's supposed to be working on it, but
Okay. I did notice tonight that, Mr. Burleson, I think was maybe sent the same request, or if that came through a different matter, maybe some neighbors got together or something, but up on Wood Street, some things are happening when you ask them. I think probably, I'm just guessing here, 7, 8 out of 10 times the people will act on their own to do something. And with 80 or so properties per cinnamon around, I think if you sent out a letter to everybody, treat everybody fairly all at the same time, a great majority of those would probably go ahead and act on their own without having any further action from the city.
Bell's, so if I may speak.
Yes, I was gonna ask you to on that.
The Wood Street property owner was sent the same letter as the Bell Street property owner, which is a notice that if you do not make corrections and revisions to your property, then the city will, at its option, conduct a hearing to to declare your property to be dilapidated.
Okay.
And so I assume they started
We
cleaning it up.
thank y'all.
You're
For
correct.
5 years, I have pleaded with the city to do something about the house across the street from me, and I was told it takes time every time. Y'all have acted. Yeah,
So, so the next step on somebody such as Bales, so we jump-started it on Mr. Burleson.
Okay.
We skipped and went straight to the hearing because of the, well, because we did. But, so there's a second level that we can actually request them to come in for the hearing to determine whether it's dilapidated.
Okay.
We have not done that with Bell Street property.
Mr. Martin, is there not some requirement or ordinance in this city that above ground swimming pool in a front yard where the house is falling down and the windows hanging off and children are going in and out unsupervised? What does that do to the city's liability insurance, et cetera, some kid gets drowned and gets hurt?
Well, I'll
Not
have to
liable,
defer that
it's
for
private
another day.
property.
Yeah, but,
There you go,
well,
ordinance, so it's done.
Daniel, here's my question. You know, I know we started this back in, what, February, March?
Right.
And the time has passed,
Sure.
and nothing's been done. So what's the next step? Is there anything I can do? Do I need to
Well-
make an official complaint on that particular property? Or how do we need to proceed?
We can go ahead with the second level and make a demand for him to appear,
That's correct.
is that right?
That's correct.
And then, of course, I know it puts it off probably 60 days, but then
Better
he has 30 days from that.
But what was the deadline that was given on the first notice?
Daniel, can you tell me the letter?
Yes, I've
I
actually
mean,
gotten that here.
that was, I mean, it seemed like there would have been a, you know, do this or, you know, there's gotta be a time limit.
This is actually, dear Mr. Robertson, has come to the attention of the Board of Aldermen of Water Valley that the above described property is in serious need of cleanup and or repair and is in violation of the municipal code regarding the care and upkeep of property within the city limits. Please allow this letter to serve as notice that unless the above described property is cleaned up and or repaired within the next 10 days, the Board of Aldermen may choose to elect to place this matter for a public hearing. If it is determined at the public hearing that the subject property is in violation of the municipal code of Water Valley, the city shall be allowed to enter onto your property in order to clean up and or repair it. The cost of any necessary cleanup and or repair will be assessed back to your city taxes. Please endeavor to remedy this problem without further intervention by the city of Water Valley. If you should have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me.
And that date was,
Oh, that was March 6, 2018.
So,
so we're several months past the
But
10-day.
do we still have to give him the hearing?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. And so the letter to Mr. Burleson, for example, is completely different because you have to have the statutory language which provides him notice of the date and time of the hearing and all the, you gotta give him notice of the stick that you're carrying, all the penalties and possible violations and fines.
Is that a 30-day notice before the hearing? Or could we have them appear next month?
We'll probably have him appear next month. I'm not,
Yeah, the notice is 2 weeks.
yeah.
2 weeks.
So let's give, I mean, again, it kicks it down the road, but let's give him that notice. If we have to give him the hearing.
So that
And
first
maybe-
letter was not the letter that should have been sent?
No.
No?
We're sending out the cursory letter because it's not as mean to everybody. And then if they're not making any effort, then we're gonna follow up.
Okay. I think we ought to need to get a list of all that we have and see who has and who hasn't followed up.
You
Because
sent initially
it needs
7
to be
to
a
10 letters, is that
fair
correct?
to
We
the
only sent a
community.
few letters out. It was kind of a pilot type thing.
Right.
We're waiting to get an actual building inspector so he can help. Daniel just volunteered his time to do
Right,
this. This
Sure.
is not Daniel's job.
I knew it was
So
initially.
we haven't had a
7 to
person
10
to actually
letters
do this
got
job.
Yeah.
Right,
And Daniel's been kind enough to
Right.
do this and not charge us extra, I don't think,
Sure.
for this particular, I don't know if he has or not. But, you know, it's above and beyond the money that his firm gets every month for what they do
It was-
for it. So I can't remember that part, but
It started off as 2 per alderman, but
Yeah.
I've gotten several additional requests from several of them.
Okay.
So, but.
So I'm waiting to turn in the rest of my list
Let's go.
when we,
Let's just go.
but I have a whole, I've got it.
Here again, I think that if you
Got it
sent
called.
everybody, every property that was identified a letter, a lot of those are gonna take action and go ahead and do it. They're gonna do it just, they've never been asked.
So we're gonna have to, if you want us to send 80 letters out, it's not just, hey, here's a letter. You have to do the research, you have to find the
I
property
understand.
owners, you have to do all this, I mean, it's a lot of work.
It's been a long
So-
time coming now.
That's
It's
right, so
overdue.
if, we can't just send 80 letters out,
It's the
in 2
single
weeks from
biggest
now.
thing this board could do
Yeah.
to help this city.
and that's what we've been working on.
Yeah, right.
So we had to figure out the steps to do it. Daniel was helping with that with us. And yes, we would love to send out all the notices at once. But how, you're gonna give us 6 months to do all the research for every single person and find every single property owner and every single, to prepare all those letters and then send them all out at the same time? Or
Is that a
get a
question?
couple done?
Well,
Is, question for Daniel.
Yeah,
Was that the
Yeah.
question for Daniel?
yes.
Okay.
If our new building inspector has boilerplate letters,
Mhm.
can he send them out?
Yes, it just has to be sent by someone with the city, and you have to make sure the required 2 days. It has to be posted on the door. It has to be mailed to the residence that you're asking to be cleaned up, and then it has to be mailed to the address that receives the tax bill at the end of the year. So those 3 notices, and then fourthly, the notice has to be posted in City Hall.
So this was when we talked about enforcement being basically the top job demand of our new building inspector. This will be, he'll be here next month. I think we're gonna task him with, we
We can
have a
look.
list of properties.
Yes.
But I would go forward with the property on Bell Street because it's impeding investment in the city right now. And we can have him appear,
right.
and that would be.
And he's got a preliminary letter.
Yeah,
That part's
right.
been done already.
Well, that was one of the things I did address with Trey was enforcement. He has no problem with
So our building inspector would pay less than
Me.
this
it.
gentleman
Yeah,
about,
it's per hour, is a little bit different.
Yeah,
to do
right.
precisely that.
I know there was some conversation about the building inspector being on a part-time basis, but is the city gonna be willing to spend the extra money initially to get all this work started in the process? Because there might be several weeks
Mhm.
involved of work on the building inspector's part to identify and determine the status of the property.
I believe
Which
so.
I know your building inspector personally, he's a hard-working guy.
He
He's
is.
not, he's gonna get.
And I actually volunteered my time personally to help him with this task.
Right.
When he calls upon me, I will help him
Sure.
in my spare time to go to the courthouse and try to look up some of these
Do
things.
we need any type of motion to require the hearing?
Yes, sir.
I
Okay.
understand about spending time. I'm here, I'm away from my family right now here tonight, and I get paid a dime.
All right.
So,
Ms. Lane wants to make a statement.
I'm done.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm kind of like with Lee, I mean, if we could blanket people, because, again, I've got a burned out building on my street for 2 years, right? And I know that the man who owns this has the wherewithal to get that building whipped it and shut. So I'll be glad to help out. I have actually finally retired, and I could help. If anybody needs some help, I'd be glad to help out, especially on Market Street.
Let's get up, before I forget, let's get a motion to allow Daniel to request a hearing
For the Bell Street.
Makes
Well, it's
sense.
not, yes, it is Bell Street.
It is Bell Street, for the property on Bell Street. So Kagan makes that motion. We need a second from Sentiment. All in favor? That's unanimous. Ms. George, you have a second?
Yes, I have had more people visit What About Anna. The 2 things that are eyesores on Main Street, the biggest eyesore, is the house across from the crawdad hole and the porch on it. People have said, what in the world, why doesn't the city do something about that porch over there? The other one is the hog wire fence on the one down there, the White House by the city ditch. What, is there any kind of rules and regulations can be put on the city of those kind of properties? Because they asked if we were raising animals in the city. But it is, those 2 things, they say, what in the world have they allowed that to happen in Waterville?
I think we could probably address one of them, but the fence, I don't think violates the ordinance of fencing.
It was just an affordable way for single moms
Yeah.
and for kids. So,
That's right.
you know,
Not get run over.
Well, has anything been done about that porch?
It hasn't been addressed.
They put different things on that porch. It's not the same items every week you drive by. They move stuff and do stuff, and they move stuff and do stuff. I mean, the people who are there, they work, and one is an artist, and, you know, it's not the same stack of stuff. And I can
It
see if
is
it's
junk,
this,
and
if
it
it's
looks
stuff.
like junk to everybody that comes into the city.
Put it in the backyard.
No, it's got 5 feet of grass back there. that's-
Okay, moving along. Next item is the electric department write-offs, March through May this quarter. I believe y'all have, and there's two different things here, so the first one would be the write-offs according to TVA's authority, and those write-offs this quarter is $5,602.72, and y'all have the list of the people. And I'll remind you again, even though we're writing them off, we do not stop trying to collect these debts. So I need a motion that we accept the electric department's write-off for this quarter. Kagan, and then Herbie seconds. All in favor?
Can you remind me why these are written off? Have these
That's
people
accounting.
moved away from
A lot of
town?
them have moved, and their deposits did not cover the balance.
Mhm.
That's the biggest case, they've moved, or some of them may have had to cut off.
It's similar to banks in that they have to show what accounts are active to show what